The head of the agency that's been trying to lessen the oil shock from the war in the Middle East is sounding an alarm again. It says the effective shutdown of shipments through the Strait of Hormuz is causing the biggest oil crisis in history.
We are facing the biggest energy security threat in the history. And as of today, we lost 13 million barrels per day of oil in this the crisis we are having now.
All this as there's a controversy over mining the strait. The U.S. military is dismissing a Washington Post report that says it would take up to 6 months to make the strait safe for shipping once the war ends. The Post was reporting that a senior U.S. official told a congressional hearing that it would take that long to clear the Strait of sea mines. But a Pentagon spokesperson is now calling the report dishonest, claiming that the Washington Post cherry-picked leaked information. All right, to sort some of this out, Ryan Cummings is the chief of staff at the Stanford Institute for Economic Policymaking. Ryan, good morning. Thanks for joining us. Now, we're hearing about concerns over mining the strait. The president posting this morning that they're going to clear the strait, and quite aggressive language around anybody placing more mines in this strait. But the sum of all of this is it's still closed. So what does that mean for oil and fuel flows through?
It means it's going to continue to be a significant challenge. And each day this goes on, that means, as the clip that came on before me says, there's 13 million barrels a day that are not being produced. So far, there's close to 1 billion barrels of oil that have not been produced because of the Strait of Hormuz being closed. So for scale, that's as if the whole world stopped producing any oil for 10 days, pretty much, if you look at total global daily supply of oil. And each day this goes on, it's going to get worse, and these challenges are going to get greater.
It seems to me that we are seeing a cascading effect in the aviation industry now, that they're looking at their forecast through into the fall and saying, it's very, very precarious here. We don't have the supplies. The supplies are expensive for airline fuel. Lufthansa canceled 20,000 short-haul flights in Europe through October. So what are they looking at, and how long will they have to curb their aviation flights in order to meet this crisis?
They're going to have to curb it for as long as this goes on. And again, as I previously said, the longer it goes on, the more they're going to have to curb and the more dire the situation is going to get. So if you look at jet fuel, for example, the price of a barrel of jet fuel has more than doubled since the conflict began. And we're seeing widespread measures taken throughout Europe, for example, with Italy restricting jet fuel supplies at certain airports for certain flights. The European Union broadly is beginning to take measures to ensure that they have physical supply, but they can only do this for so long, with officials saying that they have about 5 months worth of supply. And after that, they might have to do more widespread cancellation. So it looks like the Lufthansa situation was more about the prices than it was the actual physical supply. But again, once it turns into a physical supply crisis, that's just not something you can buy your way out of. You physically need the barrel.
Ryan, what is the impact on other fuel demands in Europe, for example? We're hearing Fatih Birol, as you just heard from the IEA, saying it's the worst crisis in history, oil crisis. We thought the start of the Russian aggression against Ukraine was the worst crisis. He's saying it's worse now. So what is Europe doing to try to, in a way, ease the pain?
Yeah, so you do see widespread demand reduction measures. So Europe generally exports a lot of gasoline, but then they import all of their, what energy analysts call middle distillates, meaning both diesel and jet fuel. So again, you see Germany, for example, trying to say that gas stations can only change their price once a day. You see Italy taking some of these measures. Slovenia and Romania have also done some restrictions on the exports. So these are the beginning measures, but as time goes on and prices get even higher, we're going to see more drastic measures. So for example, you've already seen some countries in the developing world mandate work from home. You could see that to try and cut down on commuting costs. You could see flights curtailed. You could see commercial operations for large trucks that use a lot of diesel, given permits or something like this. So there's a lot of options that they have, but none of them are good.
That's not very optimistic as Canadians start to think about. It's okay. Traveling this summer, do you think that we're going to see more staycations and people canceling trips, long-haul trips, for example, because of this?
In the United States and Canada, we're a little more inoculated from this than the Europeans are, just because of how much supply they get directly from the Middle East. So Europe, for example, jet fuel gets about a third of their supply from imports, and half of that is from the Middle East. In the US and Canada, again, we're exporting that, so we can just reroute that production here. If you look at the total expenditure, for example, if you're taking a summer vacation driving across the country, it does increase your expenditure because gas prices are going to be higher, but not by an extraordinary amount. But for flying, you might see a severe reduction in that, either because the airlines are trying to pass on the high jet fuel costs to ticket prices and people don't want to pay those, or alternatively, they just start canceling the routes. So if the Strait opens tomorrow, we'll definitely see some relief, and hopefully going into the summer, things will get better. But if it remains closed, it's only going to get more challenging.
What's your prediction? Doesn't seem like it's going to open anytime soon.
Well, if the president's going to fire missiles at speedboats in the Strait and there's escalation, then it's not going to be great. And again, even if they come to a deal today, operationally getting all of that production back online, getting all of the logistics and ships sorted out. I mean, it takes these ships 6 weeks often to arrive at a destination. So if you get that product flowing immediately again, it's still going to take 6 weeks before you have that physical supply there. So I generally don't like making predictions as an economist, but it's certainly not going to be as it was before the war in Iran started.
And as we've been discussing on our program this morning, once airline prices go up, it's rare you see them come down.
Yeah, exactly. And for the airlines, they're, as economists would say, unhedged, meaning they don't generally, especially in the US and Canada, they don't buy their fuel ahead of time at a certain price. So they're really subjected to what the market is, the market price of jet fuel is. And that's going to be passed on, and they're going to pass that on over a period of probably 2 to 3 quarters. So until the end of the year.
All right, Ryan, thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.